for seasonable weather, for abundance of the fruits of the earth, and for peaceful times, let us pray to the Lord. Lord, have mercy.
We have a looming vocational crisis. My friend Matthew Namey recently concluded a study on Orthodox clergy in North America, taking into account the number of clergy who are of retirement age, as well as the customary passing of time, those who fall asleep in the Lord. And the truth, according to his study, is that within 5 years, with no changes to the custom, that is, same number of seminarians, same number of graduates, same number of ordinands, same number of new priests, that in 5 years or so, 1/4 of all Orthodox churches in America will be without a priest. If that's true, that's a crisis. That's a vocations crisis. And we at the seminary, we have a lot to say about a vocations crisis because it's our vocation at the seminary to prepare men for ministry in the church. It's our special task and our special gift here at St. Tikhon's, because here we have been since 1938 founded as a pastoral school with the specific intention to train pastors for Orthodox parishes, and specifically, though not limited only to, the parishes of North America. So it's in our best interest to think about this, pray about this, consider this, and try to make as much as possible a forward-thinking solution, to propose a solution, or at least to be involved in the discussion about how to resolve the coming vocational crisis. Now, there was also a study done by Alexei Krindach, who is considered officially or unofficially to be the sort of statistician of the Orthodox churches in America. He's done study on youth ministries, campus ministries, tithing, the effects on COVID in parishes, and so forth. But years ago, he did a study on evangelism, in which I took part. And what he discovered was a dramatic absence of Orthodox Christianity across the United States. Now, this is not a surprise to us. We represent somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 of 1% of Americans, which means that there need to be 1,000 people to find 3 Orthodox Christians. Okay? But he put it in map form, and the map showed the United States, each state broken into little squares, and those squares showed the counties in each state, and then areas were shaded to show the vast populations in ranking size of Orthodox Christians in America. Certain places in California, deep red, means lots and lots of Orthodox Christians. New York and the New England area, lots and lots of Orthodox Christians. The vast majority of the map was white, and white meant 0 Orthodox Christians in any county in that particular place. I call that map white for harvest, because it shows the vast land of our country and all the places where 997 out of 1,000 people are not Orthodox Christians. We have an obligation given to us by our Lord to reach those people, starting with the ones who have no concept of Jesus Christ and working our way all the way through. And so Matthew Namey's study does not take into account the need for priests in all the mission churches that should be planted in all of those areas, which on Alexei Krindach's map are white. So if we don't change anything in the current status quo, within 5 years it is projected a rapid decline of the number of clergy in our land, down to missing a priest in 1 out of every 4 congregations. This has led me to raise the question, what will we do about this? Well, here's a starter. I took some time, and am taking some time, to reflect not only with clergy, but also with men who are interested to pursue the priesthood, who feel in some form or fashion, whether internally in their own hearts or externally by parishioners who say things like, I could see you being a priest one day, to take those 2 specific groups of people, changing the changeable in each case, to look at what does St. Paul say are the qualifications of an ordained man in the church. Let's start with that, because it's not a thing that we often talk about, actually, in our Orthodox church tradition. We discuss St. John Chrysostom's 6 books on the priesthood, absolutely critical, foundational spiritual text for the preparation of clergy. The great book, The Orthodox Pastor, by Archbishop John Shahovskoy, very, very important theological read, very simple. You could say almost entry-level while same time being very profound. But I have not personally heard, in quite a long time at least, any reflection on what St. Paul said to young Timothy concerning the qualifications for a bishop. Now, just a quick note of biblical history. In the New Testament times, the bishop and the presbyter more or less were one office. Episkopos, bishop, presbyteros, presbyter or priest. The presbyter bishop or the bishop presbyter was more or less one and the same. So when St. Paul is speaking to young Timothy, he says, he who desires to be a bishop desires a good thing. It is a bishop, but it is also a presbyter. You could see, flipping over just a page or two in the Bible to his letter to Titus, where he says the same in presbyteral language, he who desires to be a presbyter. Let's take a look together at these words. I want to warn you in advance. This is a hard word. It's a very hard word. It's a hard word for me to hear myself. It's a very hard word for me to say myself, because I am sitting in a position right now when I'm speaking to you as one who may seem to have some air of superiority. I have none of that, I assure you. I am equally as unworthy as all of the rest of my brethren. Nevertheless, it's important for us to be reminded what St. Paul says are the standards or qualification of he who desires to be, let's say for the sake of this little conversation, an ordained man in the Orthodox Church. He does speak about bishops. He does speak about deacons following this. We won't touch on that one. He does speak about presbyters to Titus. Today, let's just say the qualifications and standards for a man who wishes to be ordained in the church. Allow me to read for you St. Paul's first letter to Timothy, chapter 3, the very beginning for you. This is in the RSV translation, which, for whatever it may be worth, is my personal favorite. St. Paul says to Timothy, "This saying is sure, if anyone aspires to the office of a bishop," parenthesis, remember bishop and presbyter, same thing. "If anyone aspires to the office of a bishop, he desires a noble task. Now a bishop must be," and here are the qualifications, "above reproach, the husband of one wife, temperate, sensible, dignified, hospitable, an apt teacher, no drunkard, not violent but gentle, not quarrelsome, and no lover of money. He must manage his own household well, keeping his children submissive and respectful in every way. For if a man does not know how to manage his own household, how can he care for God's church? He must not be a recent convert, or he may be puffed up with conceit and fall into the condemnation of the devil. He must be well thought of by outsiders, or he may fall into reproach and the snare of the devil." These qualifications from 1 Timothy chapter 3, I would like to take a few minutes simply to amplify. I took some time looking at the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, a number of lexicons. Those are the word books of the New Testament that help amplify the meaning of various Greek words in the Greek New Testament. And I would like to share with you a brief word study, try to amplify a little bit what St. Paul said in language that will help to explain a little bit what each of those means. So he begins, "This is a faithful word. This saying is sure. If anyone aspires to the office of a bishop," it says if anyone struggles to attain this, if he struggles to attain this office, he desires a beautiful, good, noble work. This is a good thing. We want people to aspire to this. He must be, it says, a bishop must be above reproach. It's interesting here, it indicates that he should have a firm grasp of the healing grip of Jesus. He should be above reproach, have a firm grasp on himself and a firm grasp of his own faith, above reproach. St. Paul says, husband of one wife. The Greek literally says, a one-woman man, just like you might hear in a country western song, a one-woman man. The woman could be wife or woman, and generally here, of course, we would say the husband of one wife. Next, he must be sober. We read temperate in the RSV. He must be sober. He must have self-control is literally what the word means. The next word should be very familiar to any of us who has been reading any of the books that are coming out of Essex, because the next word, which in the RSV is translated sensible, is the word sophrona, from which Saint Sophrony of Essex got his name. It means rational, moderate, prudent, restrained, disciplined. He must be sensible, says the RSV. The next word in the RSV is dignified. Dignified comes from the Greek word kosmion. Kosmion, you can hear in it the word cosmos. Think of Genesis 1, when the Lord put the heavens and the earth and all that's created in the heavens and the earth in their perfect and beautiful order. Kosmion comes from the Greek verb kosmeo, which means to put in order, to be well-ordered, balanced. So beautiful. The next word is hospitable in the RSV. It's a most beautiful compound word from the Greek. Philoxenia is the noun from two words. Philos means love. Xenos means foreigner or stranger. Hospitable or hospitality means the love of stranger. He who desires to be a bishop, he who desires to be an overseer, a presbyter, an ordained man in the church, he must have the practice of hospitality, the love of stranger. The next one's the simplest one, didaktikon. We get didactic in English from didaktikon. It just means a teacher. Next, St. Paul lists a number of negatives. He says, not with wine. In the RSV, not a drunkard, no drunkard. It's important for us to recognize that if a man have some form of addiction, he must find sobriety. He must. Because whatever that addiction may be, if he brings it with him into the priesthood, it will wreck at least three. It will wreck him, it will wreck his family, and it will wreck his parish. The next one, very, very appropriate for today. It says, he must not be violent but gentle. Not violent but gentle. Here's the word, pliktin. Mi pliktin in the Greek, not a bully. Not a bully. Think of the amount of cyberbullying that's going on in the orthosphere. Maybe we even dare say in the orthobrosphere, both among clergy and among lay people who have their YouTube channels and other forms of internet communication. He who desires to be an ordained man may not be a bully or violent person. Rather, it says in the RSV, not violent but gentle, but right, fitting, moderate, reasonable. Very beautiful. The next word also has an A primitive on the front. That means you take something, put an A on the front, means the negative of that. Theist believes in God. Atheist doesn't believe in God. In this case, it takes the word for fighter, puts an A on the front, not a fighter. It means not contentious, both in physical conflict and general strife. Must not be a fighter. The next one, also with a little A primitive on the beginning, not a lover of silver. All one word, not a lover of silver. It means not greedy, not hungry for money. Next we turn to one which is extremely important in our day because the varieties of parenting that have developed in our time, in our day, substantially lack a connection to parenting from the past, and oftentimes not with good result. St. Paul says that he who aspires to be to the office of a bishop, to be an ordained man, must manage his own household well, keeping his children submissive and respectful in every way. For if a man does not know how to manage his own household, how can he care for God's church? Listen to what St. Paul says here. So beautiful. Of his own home, he says, if you eat oikos yogurt, O-I-K-O-S, means household. If of his own household, he is not a good proistamenos. Proistamenos is the word used in Greek Orthodox churches that we in English would say rector. It says he must be a good rector in his own home, having his children in, according to the Greek lexicons, enforced or voluntary subordination. Essentially, it means teaching the children about the Lord, thy will be done. We could reference in Luke chapter 2, verse 51, how Jesus was obedient and submissive to his parents. Children's obedience, it's suggested in these lexicons, should be won by an authority that commands respect. So St. Paul says he must manage his own household well. He must be the rector of his own home. He must keep his own children respectful in every way. And then, why? It says, if a man not know how to manage his own household, if a man is not the good rector of his own house, how is it that he could care for those in God's house? And the care for those in God's house specifically is the verb that's used of the Good Samaritan. So think about that just for a moment. A man must be a good rector of his own house, keeping his children in voluntary subordination, teaching them, thy will be done, Lord, just like Jesus was obedient to his own parents, reference Luke 2:51, with all reverence and sobriety, because if he cannot be the rector of his own house, how can he be like the Good Samaritan, caring for the wounds of those in his care? Beautiful, very beautiful. Next, he must not be a recent convert. Neophyte is the transliterated term. Neophyte means newly planted seed. He can't be a new plant in the church. Why? St. Paul says why. Or he may be puffed up with conceit. In the lexicons, it suggests that the puffed up with conceit relates to being so arrogant so as to be demented, puffed up with conceit. That's a heavy word. Or he may fall into the condemnation of the devil. Lastly, he says he must be well thought of by outsiders. Very specifically, it says he must have a good witness. Martyria is the word that's used there. A good witness. He must have a good martyrdom. That doesn't mean that he will die to his neighbors, though he may. But it means he must bear a good witness to what it means to be a Christian, to those on the outside, to those outside of the church, or else, St. Paul says, he may fall into the reproach and the snare of the devil. Where, listen to this, the snare of the devil in the lexicons is like mousetrap. If he would not have a good witness outside, he would fall into the mousetrap of the devil, which is likewise translated, it was a name that was given to the Trojan horse in Greek mythology, that the devil will hide in that very interesting looking gift and then come and get you once he's inside. So let me summarize for just a moment, having read through both. Let me summarize it just in the general words to get that picture one more time together. St. Paul would say, this saying is sure, if anyone desires to be ordained in the Orthodox Church, he desires a good thing. He aspires or struggles to attain a good thing, a beautiful, noble work. He should have a firm grasp of Jesus. He should be above reproach, having a firm grasp upon himself and his own faith. He should be a one-wife man. He should be sober with self-control, rational, moderate, prudent, restrained, disciplined. He should be well put in order, well ordered and balanced. He should love strangers. He should be an apt teacher. He should not be drunk with wine. He should not suffer addictions. He should not be a bully or a violent person, but rather he should be moderate, gentle, reasonable, right, and fitting. He should not be a fighter, whether in physical conflict or general strife. He should not be a lover of money, greedy. Of his own home, he should be a good rector, keeping his children in voluntary subordination as Jesus was obedient to his own parents, with all reverence and seriousness and nobility, being worthy of reverence. For if he can't be the rector of his own home, how could he be the rector of God's church? He should not be a newly planted seed, a new convert, because he might become arrogant so as to be demented and fall into the condemnation or the judgment of the devil. And lastly, he should have a good witness to those on the outside, to those outside the church, in order not to fall into disgrace or reproach or reviling or insult and be captured in the mousetrap of the devil. Brothers, when we hear these beautiful but heavy words from St. Paul, we might likely say to ourselves, who could stand? Who could do this? Why would I raise my hand to that? or not why, but how? How possibly could I do so? I feel the same way on this side of ordination as I did on the other side. I agree with you, how? But I would say that it's important to remember the vast majority of the things that we have just read are characteristics of a true Christian. Above reproach, temperate, sensible, dignified, hospitable, no drunkard, not violent but gentle, not quarrelsome, etc. I would say, let's remember that the standard that St. Paul is setting is not a new standard for the clergy. This is the Christian standard for Christians, and the clergy are called to be more strictly held to that one standard. Likewise, we must remember the beautiful words that we hear in confession. If thou, O Lord, shouldst mark iniquity, who could stand? But there is forgiveness with thee. When we go to confession, we say, if God would hold us to account for every single sin in our lives, who could be saved? No one. No, not one. But God is merciful. Now, a number of these qualifications have very limited gray area. Husband of one wife means husband of one wife. Not one wife followed by another wife followed by another wife. Means one wife. And there's very little movement in that in the canonical practice of the church. On the other hand, dignified, sensible, hospitable, apt teacher, mileage varies. There's you could say some wiggle room. There's a broad range of a norm in those particular areas. So we thank God for his mercy. We thank God that he does take his fallen creation and make it worthy. When axios is shouted, he is worthy at an ordination, it is the worthiness of God that's being given as a gift to the man, not that the man himself is somehow or superhuman above all the rest. We must keep that into account at all times. Likewise, we must remember the words that are prayed at a man's ordination. When the bishop lays his hands upon his head, he says, the grace divine, which always healeth that which is infirm, and completeth that which is lacking. It's a beautiful, beautiful word, elevateth this man to be a presbyter or whatever he's being ordained to at that particular time. It's beautiful. The grace divine is coming to heal the infirmity of man and to complete that which is lacking. That does not mean in that moment that a man who was addicted to pornography by the laying on of hands will be instantly healed from that pornography. Not the case. That's why the addictions must be dealt with in advance, to use that as one example. But in the context of becoming a priest, one offers himself and all of the grace that he's been given by God already, and is given an added grace to be the proestamenos, the one who stands in front, the one who is not held to a different standard but the same standard more strictly. Brothers, it is a heavy word. Brothers, it is a heavy task. St. John Chrysostom and his friend, in that book I mentioned at the beginning, 6 books on the priesthood, 6 little essays on the priesthood, he and his friend had arguments about how they were going to stay away. I'm not doing that. I'm not worthy to do that. Not me. In fact, they back and forthed it with one another to the point where they finally said, well, I'll do it if you do it. And then they said, okay. And one of them went and the other one didn't. Read it. It's remarkable. They had that sense of unworthiness, which we must maintain. On the other hand, the Lord says, who will go for me? Whom will I send? Those are the words that he said to the prophet Isaiah in Isaiah chapter 6. The Lord said to in the place that I used to reference the map earlier, the fields are white for harvest. The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. So, brothers, we have a season coming on us where now more than ever, there is a need for men to pursue vocations in the church, and particularly vocations to the priesthood. It falls to the clergy and the lay people in the parishes to seek out the first and finest, let's just say, the ones in whom God's grace is showing to be the future proestameni, the future rectors of our churches, the ones who most among us represent these beautiful characteristics that St. Paul has sent before us. And if we feel in our hearts that we may have such a vocation, let us set that before our parish priest. Let us set that before the broader community in the parish to see, is it I, Lord? Am I the one who's being sent? And once sent by that parish and blessed by the bishop, then come to St. Tikhon's. And then we can begin to take those next formal steps where we might begin to not just fill those gaps which are left by the retirements of the venerable clergy of our church and those who fall asleep in the Lord piously in the faith, but also to put in every one of those little teeny squares across America a new Orthodox church with a new priest. Overwhelm us with candidates for the priesthood, and we will be glad to serve the church to form them for ministry in your parishes.